be subject to people saying that her dad sexually harassed somebody, or her dad,
a born girl,
was cruel to animals.
At 83 years old, Wayne Newton stands as one of the last living symbols of classic Las Vegas entertainment. For decades, he was known as Mr. Las Vegas, a man whose voice, charm, and stage presence defined an entire era of show business. With his smooth singing style, warm smile, and natural confidence, he became one of the most recognized entertainers in America. But behind the bright lights and standing ovations was a life filled with risk, ambition, heartbreak, and financial disaster. His story is not just about fame and success. It is also about losing almost everything and fighting to survive when the world believed his best days were over. Wayne Newton was born in Virginia and showed talent from a very young age. Along with his brother, he performed music in small clubs and fairs, slowly building experience and confidence. When his family moved to Las Vegas in the late 1950s, everything changed. At that time, Las Vegas was growing fast. Big casinos were opening, and live entertainment was becoming a major attraction. Wayne's talent quickly caught attention. He began performing regularly on the Las Vegas Strip, sometimes doing multiple shows in a single night. His energy seemed endless, and audiences loved him. As the years passed, he became one of the highest-paid performers in the city. Legends like Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley respected him, and he performed in front of presidents, celebrities, and royalty. His hit songs, including Danky Schoen, made him famous across the country. Money flowed in quickly. He bought luxury cars, rare Arabian horses, and a massive estate called Casa de Shenandoah. The property became one of the most famous private homes in Nevada, filled with beautiful gardens, exotic birds, and expensive art. From the outside, Wayne Newton's life looked perfect. He had fame, wealth, power, and respect. But success in Las Vegas was not just about talent. It was also about business. And Wayne wanted more than just applause. He wanted ownership. He wanted control. In the early 1980s, already one of the biggest names in entertainment, he decided to take a bold step that would change his life forever. He invested in the Aladdin Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. Owning a casino was a dream for many performers, and Wayne believed it would secure his future beyond singing. It was a risky decision, but he was confident. He believed his popularity and business instincts would guide him. However, large business deals in Las Vegas were complicated. They required investors, partnerships, and financial connections. This is where the first signs of trouble began to appear. Rumors started to spread about the people involved in the deal. Questions were raised about possible connections to organized crime, something that had long been associated with early Las Vegas casinos. Although nothing was proven, the whispers alone were dangerous. For a man who had built his reputation on being polite, clean-cut, and trustworthy, even suspicion could cause damage. And soon, the whispers turned into national headlines. Wayne Newton was about to face one of the biggest battles of his life, not on stage, but in court. In 1980, Wayne Newton's world began to shake in a way he never expected. At the height of his fame, when theaters were full and his name still carried glamour and respect, a television investigation suddenly placed him under a dark cloud. The network NBC aired a report suggesting that Wayne had connections to organized crime figures during his purchase of the Aladdin Hotel. The report mentioned a man named Guido Pinosi and implied that Newton had relied on questionable financial backing to secure his investment. For many Americans watching at home, this was shocking news. Wayne Newton was not seen as a dangerous businessman. He was known as the smiling, polite entertainer who sang love songs and performed for presidents. To hear his name connected to mob rumors felt almost unbelievable. But in the world of media, even suspicion can cause serious damage. Almost overnight, the image of Mr. Las Vegas began to crack. Newspapers repeated the story. Talk shows discussed it. Critics questioned his character. For Wayne, this was not just a professional problem. It was deeply personal. He had spent his entire life building a reputation based on trust, charm, and hard work. Now that reputation was under attack. He strongly denied all accusations and insisted that he had done nothing wrong. Feeling that the report had unfairly destroyed his name, he filed a defamation lawsuit against NBC. The legal battle lasted for years and became one of the most talked-about cases in entertainment news at the time. In court, Wayne argued that the network had presented misleading information and damaged his career. At first, it seemed like he had won. A jury awarded him millions of dollars in damages, recognizing the harm done to his image. For a moment, it looked like justice had been served. But the victory did not last. The award was later reduced, and eventually the decision was overturned by the appellate court. Legally, Wayne walked away without the financial victory he had hoped for. Emotionally and publicly, the damage was already done. Even though no criminal wrongdoing was proven, the public perception had shifted. Once doubt enters the public mind, it is difficult to remove. Some fans remained loyal, but others began to look at him differently. In entertainment, reputation is everything. Wayne was still performing, still selling tickets, but the golden glow around his name was not as bright as before. Behind the scenes, the stress was enormous. Legal fees were expensive. Business pressure increased. At the same time, he continued living a very costly lifestyle. He owned luxury homes, rare horses, private jets, and employed a large staff to manage his properties and shows. Maintaining this image of success required constant income. While he was still earning money from performances, the expenses were growing faster. The lawsuit had not only hurt his public image, but also drained financial resources. And unlike a simple stage performance, business mistakes do not disappear after the curtain falls. They follow you. The early 1980s marked a turning point. Wayne Newton was no longer just a beloved singer. He was now a celebrity facing controversy, financial pressure, and growing skepticism. Yet he refused to slow down. He believed he could outwork the problems, just as he had outworked competition during his early career. But the challenges ahead would test him more than any performance ever had. The fame that once protected him now placed him under a microscope. Every decision, every investment, every rumor became headline news. And as the years moved forward, the real financial storm was just beginning. By the early 1990s, the financial pressure surrounding Wayne Newton had reached a breaking point. For years, he had continued performing, smiling on stage, and greeting fans as if nothing was wrong. But behind the bright lights of Las Vegas, his finances were quietly falling apart. Wayne had built a lifestyle that matched his fame. He owned multiple properties, including the massive estate Casa de Shenandoah, filled with rare Arabian horses, exotic birds, luxury cars, and priceless collectibles. He employed a large staff to maintain the property, care for the animals, manage his shows, and handle daily operations. The cost of maintaining such a life was enormous. At the same time, his income was no longer as strong as it had been during his peak years. Las Vegas was changing. New stars were arriving. Entertainment trends were shifting. While Wayne was still respected, the city was no longer centered around one performer the way it once had been. His expenses remained high, but his earnings were becoming less predictable. Over time, debts began to pile up. Reports later revealed that he owed millions of dollars, including a large amount in unpaid taxes to the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. Tax debt is one of the most serious financial problems anyone can face, especially a public figure. Interest and penalties grow quickly, and government agencies do not ignore unpaid balances. The pressure from creditors increased. Lawsuits began appearing. Bills stacked higher. What had once seemed like temporary financial stress slowly turned into a full crisis. In 1992, Wayne made a decision that shocked many fans. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Chapter 11 is not the same as completely giving up. It allows a person or business to reorganize debts and create a plan to repay them over time while continuing operations. But even though it offered a chance to recover, the public saw it differently. To many people, bankruptcy meant failure. Headlines across the country reported that Mr. Las Vegas was drowning in debt. For a man whose career had been built on success and glamour, this was deeply humiliating. His name, once connected to luxury and wealth, was now linked to financial collapse. The situation became even more painful because Wayne had always taken pride in his independence and business ambition. He did not want to be known as a celebrity who mismanaged money. He believed he could control his empire. Instead, the empire had grown too expensive to maintain. The bankruptcy process required him to reveal financial details publicly, something no celebrity enjoys. Every asset, every debt, every mistake became part of the record. Creditors demanded payment. Negotiations were tense. The emotional toll was heavy. Yet, even during this difficult time, Wayne refused to stop performing. Night after night, he continued to walk onto the stage, dressed sharply, singing with confidence. The audience often had no idea that behind the curtain was a man fighting to save his fortune and reputation. But bankruptcy was not the end of his troubles. It was only the beginning of a long period of legal battles, financial restructuring, and difficult decisions. Some debts were reorganized, others were settled, and some assets were sold. However, the financial strain continued to follow him for years. The story of Wayne Newton was no longer just about fame and music. It had become a cautionary tale about overspending, risky investments, and the high cost of maintaining an image of success. The King of Las Vegas was still standing, but the crown had become very heavy. After filing for bankruptcy, Wayne Newton knew he had to find new ways to rebuild both his fortune and his public image. He believed that hard work had saved him before, and it could save him again. So instead of stepping away from the spotlight, he decided to take another bold step in business. This time, he partnered with fellow entertainer Tony Orlando, a performer who had also enjoyed major success in music and television. The two men shared history in Las Vegas and understood the power of live entertainment. Together, they dreamed of opening a theater that would become a major attraction on the Strip. They believed their combined fame would guarantee success. The project was called Talk of the Town, a name inspired by the first letters of their names, Tony and Wayne. The theater was large, holding more than 2,000 seats, and it was designed to host exciting performances from both stars as well as other guest entertainers. On paper, the idea looked strong. Las Vegas had always thrived on big personalities and live shows. Wayne hoped this new venture would not only restore his financial stability, but also prove that he was still a major force in entertainment. At first, there was excitement. Fans were curious. Media coverage was positive. Both men invested time, money, and energy into the project. But running a large theater is far more complicated than performing in one. Operating costs were high. Staff had to be paid. Marketing expenses increased. Rent and maintenance were expensive. And most importantly, seats had to be filled every night. Unfortunately, the audiences did not come in the numbers they had hoped for. Some nights, more than half of the seats were empty. Ticket sales were not enough to cover expenses, and losses began to grow quickly. Financial stress once again entered Wayne's life, just when he had hoped things were stabilizing. As money problems increased, tension between the partners also grew. Business disagreements became more frequent. Pressure has a way of testing even strong friendships, and this partnership was no exception. Then the situation took an even more dramatic turn. According to reports at the time, Tony Orlando's son discovered hidden recording devices inside an office shared by the two entertainers. The discovery caused shock and anger. Tony believed he had been secretly recorded, and suspicion immediately fell on Wayne. The idea that one partner might spy on the other felt like a betrayal. Wayne denied any involvement and insisted he had nothing to do with the devices. But trust, once broken, is difficult to repair. The accusation created a deep divide between them. Publicly, the story spread quickly. Headlines once again connected Wayne Newton's name with controversy. Whether proven or not, the damage to his reputation continued. The business partnership collapsed soon after. Tony walked away from the project, and without unity at the top, the theater could not survive. Talk of the Town closed, leaving behind financial losses and personal bitterness. What was meant to be a hopeful new beginning became yet another setback. For Wayne, This failure was more than just a business loss. It was another reminder that rebuilding a fallen empire is never easy. Each attempt seemed to bring fresh complications. The public began to see a pattern: lawsuits, disputes, failed ventures. Instead of headlines about hit songs and sold-out shows, his name appeared in stories about conflict and financial trouble. The dream of restoring his fortune through business ownership once again slipped through his fingers. And still, the challenges were not over. His most treasured possession, his grand estate Casa de Shenandoah, would soon face its own crisis. For decades, the heart of Wayne Newton's world was not just the stage in Las Vegas, but his beloved estate, Casa de Shenandoah. The property was more than a home. It was a symbol of everything he had achieved. Spread across nearly 40 acres of land, the estate included a large mansion, beautifully designed gardens, horse stables, a private lake, and space for his famous Arabian horses. There were rare birds, luxury cars, and priceless personal items collected over a lifetime of success. To visitors and fans, Casa de Shenandoah represented the dream life of Mr. Las Vegas. It showed how far a young boy from Virginia had come. But as financial problems continued to follow him, even this grand estate became part of the struggle. Maintaining such a large property required enormous money. Staff salaries, animal care, maintenance, security, and property taxes created constant expenses. As Wayne faced ongoing legal battles and debt issues, keeping the estate became harder each year. In the early 2000s, he came up with a new idea. Instead of letting the property drain his finances, he would turn it into a museum and tourist attraction. The plan was to open Casa de Shenandoah to the public, allowing fans to walk through his home, see his horses, and learn about his long career. He partnered with a company that promised to help manage renovations and operations. The project included guided tours, a gift shop, and even event hosting. On paper, it seemed like a smart solution. It would protect the estate, generate income, and preserve his legacy. At first, there was excitement. Fans were curious to see where Wayne had lived and built his empire. But soon, problems began to appear. Disagreements between Wayne and the management company grew. Each side accused the other of breaking agreements and mishandling responsibilities. Wayne claimed he was being pushed out of decisions involving his own property. The company, in turn, argued that he was difficult to work with and interfered with business plans. Legal disputes followed, adding more stress and expense. At the same time, neighbors in the area began complaining about traffic, noise, and the transformation of a private residential property into a tourist site. Community tension increased. What was meant to be a creative financial solution slowly turned into another complicated battle. Renovations cost more than expected. Visitor numbers were not high enough to solve financial pressures. Lawsuits continued. By 2016, the situation reached a painful conclusion. Wayne was forced to sell Casa de Shenandoah. The estate that had once stood as the proud symbol of his success was no longer his. For him, this loss was deeply emotional. It was not just about money. It was about identity. Casa de Shenandoah had represented decades of hard work, fame, and personal dreams. Letting it go felt like closing an important chapter of his life. For fans, it marked the end of an era. The man who once owned one of the most impressive private estates in Las Vegas had now lost the very property that symbolized his rise. Yet even after this major loss, Wayne did not disappear. He did not retreat quietly into retirement. Instead, he continued to perform, determined to prove that while fortune can vanish, passion does not. But age and health would soon add new challenges to his already difficult journey. Today, at 83 years old, Wayne Newton is no longer the unstoppable young performer who once dominated the Las Vegas Strip, but he is far from finished. Time has changed many things in his life. The massive fortune he once enjoyed is gone. The grand estate that symbolized his success has been sold. Business ventures that promised fresh beginnings ended in disappointment. Yet one thing has never fully disappeared: his love for performing. Even after decades of controversy, bankruptcy, and legal battles, Wayne continues to step onto the stage. The theaters are smaller now. The crowds are not as massive as they once were, but the connection between him and his audience remains strong. In recent years, he created a more intimate show often called Up Close and Personal. Instead of grand stage productions with large orchestras and flashy effects, this format focuses on storytelling and memory. He shares moments from his early days in Las Vegas, talks about performing for presidents, and recalls friendships with legends such as Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Elvis Presley. These performances feel less like concerts and more like conversations. Fans come not only to hear him sing, but to listen to the stories of a man who lived through one of the most glamorous eras in entertainment history. His voice may not carry the same youthful power, but it still carries emotion. His smile may show age, but it still reflects warmth. Performing gives him purpose. He has often said that when he stands under the lights, he feels alive. Music has always been a safe place, even when business decisions failed or headlines turned negative. However, aging brings physical challenges. In 2021, Wayne suffered a serious spinal injury that forced him to cancel several shows. For someone who spent his entire life performing night after night, the idea of being unable to walk onto a stage was frightening. Recovery required rest, medical care, and patience, things that are difficult for someone used to constant motion. Many wondered if this injury would finally push him into retirement. But Wayne refused to give up. After months of treatment and rehabilitation, he slowly returned to performing. His determination impressed many fans and fellow performers. While he may not command the same spotlight he once did, his resilience has earned him a different kind of respect. Instead of being remembered only for fame and fortune, he is now also seen as a symbol of endurance. Las Vegas itself has changed dramatically. Modern mega-resorts, new music stars, and different styles of entertainment dominate the Strip. The era of classic crooners and nightly lounge shows has mostly passed. Yet Wayne remains one of the last living links to that golden time. Tourists who attend his shows often feel they are stepping back into history. His life story now serves as both inspiration and warning, a reminder that success can disappear quickly, but passion can survive almost anything. At 83, Wayne Newton's journey is not just about losing money or facing scandal. It is about continuing to stand tall when circumstances try to knock you down. His fortune may have faded, but his desire to perform has not. And for a man who built his life around music and connection, that may be the greatest victory of all. As the years pass and the bright lights of Las Vegas continue to evolve, the story of Wayne Newton stands as one of the most dramatic journeys in entertainment history. His life has been filled with extreme highs and painful lows. He experienced the kind of fame that most performers only dream about. He sang for presidents, shared stages with legends, and became known around the world as Mr. Las Vegas. His name once represented glamour, wealth, and success. Yet his life also became a powerful lesson about risk, reputation, and the fragile nature of fortune. Money can come quickly, especially in the world of entertainment. But it can disappear just as fast when investments fail, expenses grow out of control, or legal battles drain resources. Wayne's story shows how difficult it can be to balance art and business. As a performer, he was confident and gifted. As a businessman, he faced challenges that proved much harder to manage. The lawsuits, the bankruptcy, the loss of Casa de Shenandoah, and the public controversies all tested his strength. At times, it seemed like every step forward was followed by another setback. Yet what makes his story different from many others is that he never fully disappeared. Many celebrities who face financial ruin quietly fade away. Wayne chose another path. He kept showing up. He kept singing. He kept meeting his fans. That decision speaks deeply about who he is as a person. While some critics focus on the mistakes he made, many fans focus on his resilience. In a world that often celebrates only success, there is something powerful about someone who continues despite failure. At 83, Wayne no longer needs to prove that he was once a star. History has already recorded that chapter. Instead, his later years show something more meaningful: endurance.